with young adults, with one another, so that along the way, as we share the word of God and also to encounter each other, then we can, Jesus is working in my life. Jesus is alive in me. So that's why for this teaching series, we want to open up the word of God, so that hopefully at the end of every of our session, may our hearts be burned again with the passion of Christ, and to be able to share that as we leave this double door outside when we meet other people. Yeah. So for today, basically, we are going to dwell in this parable of the 10 virgins, which is actually the Sunday gospel for tomorrow. So have you guys gone for mass just now? Okay, I seen some has gone. You already went just now? Yeah, but for the rest, if you have not, then it's really a good time, and even for you, maybe what you have heard from the homily, you can even go deeper of what is actually really the meaning of the passage. And so I think before we really discuss and understand more, let's just read it up together. Yeah, so let us all read. Oh, can you see, maybe you can shift that a little bit.
Doesn't matter.
It's okay, yeah? Okay, so let's all read together. 1, 2, 3.
And the kingdom of heaven will be thanks with sins. Police ones and taking their lamps, but no oil for them. But the wise what was in his friends. Since they had grown long today, they have become drowsy and fell asleep. In the night there was a cry, "Go to the place room, not to meet him." To all those virgins got up and trimmed their lamps.
Foolish ones said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out."
But the wise ones replied,
"No, for there may not be enough for us and you. Go instead to the merchants and buy some for yourselves." While they went off to buy it, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went into the wedding feast with him. Then the door was locked. Afterwards the other virgins came and said, "Lord, Lord, open the door for us." He said in reply, "Amen, I say to you, I do not know you. Therefore stay away, for you know neither the day nor the hour."
The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Okay, so I believe you might have heard this before, and because I'm a more visual person, so I would like to just make it even more visual to you by showing you this video. Maybe Irene can help to on the volume. I think we need to check the volume. Computer. I IT blur lagi. See. Okay, I think what I'll do is let me just stop and okay, never mind. So I will share the video later. It's actually a very good video because you will be able to see the story and the emotions in a more visual way, and actually looking at this parable, I believe most of you might have heard this before. This 5 stupid one, 5 wise bridesmaid, and anyone has ever been a bridesmaid before? Okay. Oh, the girl only very few. Okay. So next time, okay. Yeah. So actually, if you notice here, it might be a bit strange to us because why the bridegroom came in the middle of the night. You know, like in Singapore, wedding is always people like to do it in the morning. I think just now Adi mentioned he went for a wedding this morning. I also went in that same wedding. And then basically in Singapore, wedding is usually in the morning. We do the holy matrimony. Then after that, either lunch or dinner, we go banquet, eat, and then go home, finish. Then the couple go honeymoon, correct? But at that time, actually, wedding is actually quite different. So So actually, unfortunately or fortunately, they actually don't go for honeymoon one. Unlike us, where in this culture in Singapore, people always plan 1 year ahead where to go for honeymoon. So during that time, it's actually in the ancient Palestine wedding. The unique thing about it is that the celebration is not just one day like here in Singapore, but actually for the wedding it's a 1 whole week of celebration. And how they run it is that it started with the groom. The groom is supposed to come to the house of the bride, but the timing of when this groom comes is actually unexpected. So the groom can actually come at his own discretion. He can suddenly surprise when I come, and he basically will come at his own time to pick up the bride, to fetch the bride, and then they will actually invite all the family villagers around the area, and then they all have to go in when the groom actually when the groom actually arrive in the bride's house, and then everyone who want to journey with them, they go into the house, and then after that they will tour a long route so that more people can join them until they finally reach their new home. So that's actually how the celebration was run during that time. And that's why it can take like about 1 week, because they actually like to tour, go on a long route. And one of the requirement also during that time, the wedding is quite challenging, especially for the bridesmaid, because what happened is that if let's say the groom come in the middle of the night, so the requirement in the culture is that those people who want to join, they need to have a lamp with the light. So that's where you see the lamp with the oil, because they need that so that when they tour in the middle of the night to the new home of the bride and the groom, they can actually light up the road, and then people don't fall down because it's so dark. So that is the requirement, and if you don't have that light, you are actually not allowed to join, because it's actually going to be dangerous for you. So that's why for those who doesn't have the lamp, you have to you cannot go. And that's actually the interesting thing about the wedding at the time. Yeah. So in this story, actually, we can see how the different group of the bridesmaids, like half of them actually, they know it, they already prepared. Okay, I know that it's going to be a long journey, and I really don't know when the groom will come. So I make sure I have a top up of supply of the oil. So they carry another flask of oil so that it's enough for their journey, while the other one thinks like, never mind, later I think it won't take too long. I think the groom will take very long. Maybe I'll sleep first, then later still got time to go to the shop and then buy, and then I come back again lah. So that's actually how it happens. And at the end of the day, you saw so from the first that in the end, those virgins who doesn't have the oil got locked up outside because they cannot go in. And actually, it was quite funny when I read this. I actually was reminded when the time, actually just a few days ago, I actually wanted to go back to my hometown in Indonesia, and I'm currently a PR in Singapore. So basically, for a PR to go overseas and then to come back, you need this thing called re-entry permit, which is valid for 5 years. And I at that time didn't notice about that there's a bit of issue with my re-entry permit. So I went to the airport, and then I actually happily go into the auto gate, and then I scan my passport. Then I go into the middle of the auto gate, and then I do my thumbprint, and apparently it cannot open. Like they say, error, you have to go and see the counter. So after that, the counter took a long time to check what is the problem with my passport or with my access to go out. And then they told me, hey, actually your permit expired last week. Why you never renew? So because of that, then I was like, expired. Like I didn't notice that it actually has expired, so I cannot go in. And the person really just give me option, and I was actually maybe a little bit more lucky than the bridesmaid there, that they got no option, totally cannot enter. For me, I got an option that one, I can actually still go overseas, but when you come, we cannot guarantee that you can continue your PR. Like they may take away my visa because I don't follow the rule, or I can actually don't go and then go the ICA and then renew it. So I really can feel like how the virgins here really like, I really want to go, and there's such a strong feeling of regret, like, oh yeah, only if I check that piece of paper regularly, then I will not fall in this embarrassing situation. And it was actually my mom's birthday. I was really so keen to go back home and celebrate with my mom. So similarly, these virgins, I believe, it's not something that they want to be left outside. I don't know whether you have been in an experience when you are like locked outside, then people inside are partying, and then I'm outside alone. So that's, I think, really what I felt at that time, like I want to celebrate, eat good food with my mom, and then I was like stuck in the auto gate, and then I have to like even take the trouble to retrieve my luggage. So that's when I realized that, okay, I have been very not disciplined. So since that time onwards, I really like, okay, I put an alarm in my phone that, okay, this date I must remember to renew next time. And it really trained me, okay, don't ever forget about this anymore. So that's actually one of the learning that I got through that experience. Yeah. And basically, just also to understand more about this parable is that actually, why did Jesus use this story? Actually, Jesus want to use this to illustrate the unknown day and the hour of the final judgment. So actually, if you read Matthew 24, 25, it's actually all talking about the coming that is, you never know. And Jesus was actually also trying to answer to one of his disciples that actually asked him in Matthew 24. So at that time, Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, and then the disciple actually asked him privately, tell us, Jesus, when will this happen? What sign will there be of your coming and of the end of age? And that's why Jesus actually used several parables, including this one, because sometimes when Jesus say that it's coming, and if you read in detail in Matthew 24, it's like, oh, there'll be like a lot of disaster, blah blah blah, and then the temple will be gone, like all very drama, and then the disciple just cannot understand how is this, and therefore Jesus actually used all this parable to really illustrate that better. And he related to the culture of the wedding, just like how actually in the wedding you really need to be vigilant, to be prepared, and to always ever be ready whenever the bridegroom comes. And Jesus also want to draw parallel to himself, which is he is actually the groom of the church, and he actually want all his disciples to always be alert and to always be ready to welcome the coming of Christ. And the oil itself, actually, it represents faith and works of charity and love. And for us then, how does it actually relate to us is that we are also called to always be ready. In what way? In having our faith in our hearts, as well as to always be able to be ready to share works of charity and love to one another. And if you also see that the oil is actually the one that supplies the fire, it's the one that makes the, what do you call that, the thing to burn, right? And then then it will light up the darkness. So similarly, we are also called to bring the light to the world that is full of darkness nowadays, the world that is corrupted, and a lot of people outside they may not know God. And I even have some friends who like, questioning about life. Why am I here? Actually, no point in doing everything. And like people out there also need our presence to really be the hands and feet of Christ in this world. So similarly, that's where we also need to always be ready and to share the works of charity and love to one another. And in that story, you also notice that one of the things that I question is that why do these five wise virgins, when the foolish one try to ask, like, share lah, like in Asia, share lah, food also share one. But they say, oh, sorry, but not enough leh. So you please go to the merchants, and then I have to go in already. So at first, like, we may think that it's why so stingy, but as I reflect, then I realized that actually in faith or in our spiritual life, not everything can always be shared. So there are things that sometimes it does require our own selves to do it, to be ready for the coming of Christ, and be ready to grow in holiness. And last time when I was just still in university, just joined like prayer meeting like this, I always like rely on others, like the rest also lazy, what they also never do, abstinence lah, fasting, never mind lah, I chill also lah, need to do. But then I realize whenever I rely on others, then that's where like I will never achieve what God is calling us for holiness. I will never be able to achieve that readiness that God wants me to have. And so as I try to look at within me and what else can I do to grow my spiritual life with God, then that's where I see the growth, because each of us need to put that effort and to be responsible of our own salvation. At the end of the day, when in the final judgment, when really the bridegroom come, are we the foolish virgins who cannot enter, or are we the wise one who can actually be ready with the oil and the lamb? Yeah. So with that, how can we then be always ready? So I learned these terms called spiritual disciplines, which are actually acts of behavior or commitment that we do in order to grow in holiness. And just like when we go to the gym, right? You train so that you have muscle, your this part firm, this part firm, this part firm. And sometimes you even need to be very specific. Okay, you want to make this more tone, then you must do more of this. Then if you want this part, then you have to do a lot of squat or something like that. And if only when you train to do it with disciplines, that's when you then achieve what you have in your mind, what is your goal. So similarly, as we want to train ourselves for holiness, we also need that effort from our own selves, and not always waiting for others. Oh, okay, wait, maybe if Emmaus conduct a rosary, then I do rosary, or maybe wait until Emmaus do intercessory, then I pray intercessory, but sometimes it's also need even our own selves with that desire, and we have to always pray to God so that we can have that strength and grace to do it. So what are some of the examples of spiritual disciplines? Actually, some of them are quite similar to what you may be familiar with growth tools. What are the tools that enables us to grow in our spiritual life? Which is sacraments, prayer, Bible, and then we also have having a community, a context of community, and also service, where we can actually grow deeper in our relationship with God. But there are also some others that actually requires you to commit within yourselves, which is, for example, like fasting or abstinence, or even doing things like contemplative prayer, spiritual exercise, and I think we are very lucky in Catholic Church that we have so many like spirituality that we can actually tap on, like the Ignatian spirituality with spiritual exercise, or there are also books that we can commit to read to enrich our knowledge about God, to help us to understand more of the Bible. So these are some of the things that we also can do to in order to build our readiness for salvation. The time that maybe none of us would know how it will be in the future, because none of us died and reborn yet, right? So we are all still here, and therefore, even more, we need to be always ready to welcome the coming of Christ. And we never know, like in life, we don't know when the time will come when we have to leave the world. And it's it can always be a surprise, but it can also be something like some people cannot accept in our lives. But the time will come and we never know, and therefore we need to be ready, just like the wise bridesmaid, to welcome the groom and to meet him in person, hopefully after we leave this world. Yeah. So for me myself, actually one of the thing that I realized that has really helped me to grow in my spiritual relationship with God, in my spiritual life, is actually the Bible, and also abstinence. And actually I failed a lot of times lah, like I was like trying to commit to God, okay God, every Wednesday and Friday I want to refrain from eating meat. And at first it was okay, very easy lah, can lah. Anyway, fish also tastes quite good, and tofu also not bad. But there are times when like my colleague will ask me, hey Irma, today KFC got promo and very nice, it's like set meal, then got discount, you want or not? Then I'm like, oh how? And a few times I honestly failed, and then I keep bargaining to God, God never mind lah, tomorrow lah, okay I swap, I Thursday I Thursday do fasting, Wednesday I eat first, okay God. And I realized when I do that, it become a habit, I keep swapping days to God. And but then during the days when I'm just okay, I really want to offer it up to God, and somehow I only realized later on that actually by doing that, it also helped me in another area, even beyond eating. So even when I now go shopping, like I find that somehow it feels a little bit easier than before to resist temptation, especially for girls. Girls usually see clothes, okay bye, but but now it's like, okay, I will think first, actually do I really need it? Maybe if the $10, never mind lah, maybe can keep first, or maybe someone need it more, then donate to the love box. Yeah, so that's actually where like I realized, even by doing in one thing, actually it trained me to be able to control my appetite better, not only in food but also in restraining myself from being greedy, restraining myself from being just so selfish, want everything for myself. And it's really difficult actually, still failing one time and then like still tempted another time. But I guess as whenever we fall, then okay, rise up again, try again. And I realized that it helps me to go a little bit deeper, bit by bit, to be closer to God. And every Wednesday and Friday, then it triggered me to talk to God more, because I need to ask God help me so that I don't get tempted. And somehow in that process I got communicate to God more in my daily day to day. So that's where I also encourage all of you. We maybe it's tough for us to do everything, like wow, too holy already, like priest do everything, but you know, like sometimes a small step, maybe even for me, just start with that simple abstinence Wednesday to with and Friday, and you know, even one already very tough, and by training myself to be more disciplined, it teaches me to always be more ready to talk to God and not just to focus on myself. And I think that's what I really would like to encourage all of us. And with that, as a conclusion, I think it's through this parable, let's remember that, you know, let's God is calling us to be ready like the wise, and to always have in us that oil of faith and works of charity and mercy. And we are also responsible of our own salvation. We cannot wait until, or maybe wait until Toby told me to go to read this book, but it's really in me whether I really want to be with God or not. So with that, that's it for today. Just a simple one, and hopefully you can take away something.